All right. Hi, Fletch. Good evening. How are you?
Hello.
And Fletch and I agreed to do this semi of streaming. I know uh,
Another test. Yeah.
other tasked with the idea of honoring our favorite art form's greatest patron, who unfortunately just passed away last week. Um, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was of course a great champion of opera and especially of American artists, and she had attended um, many of the major festivals and houses in the United States. Um, and she has also been a great supporter of the classical music and the arts. Namely, her son Jim Ginsburg owns the Chicago independent label Deal, which has produced some of the great chamber music records over time and some smaller opera recordings. One of the recordings they produced was this Czech opera named that was inspired by Yaroslav Hašek's "The Good Soldier's Schweik." I think that's how you say it, Schweik.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's a newish opera, and she championed it. She and her son championed it during their time there. But this evening, I wanted to try um, out this episode, this pilot episode, to maybe honor. Well, there are many more during the press who have honored her legacy um, of civil service for this country, but I think we would like to honor her great love for the art form and how she has supported the opera community over her long career. And so, what I wanted to do was to maybe recap the five operas that she loved the most, and maybe talk about some of the commonality among these operas. And, we all know that she was a great proponent of equality for women, and this also showed in the operas that she loved the most throughout her many years of attending these festivals and houses. There's a really beautiful interview or this article in the New York Times that came out earlier today where Francesca Zambello was recounting the many kind words Ginsburg had to say about some of Glimmer Glass's productions, among other things. It's just a nice article to read for those who want to learn more about the Supreme Court justice. But tonight we wanted to recap her five favorite operas, which were revealed on a YouTube video on the internet. And her five favorite operas are La Notte di Figaro, Don Giovanni, The Rosenkavalier, Otello, and La Fanciulla del West. And Fletch and I came up with a list of recordings, our favorite recordings, and maybe talk about the things that make these recordings special and see what it is that made them speak so deeply to RBG. So
Yeah.
let's start.
No love for the French from RGB.
Well, she most of her opera career happened in the United States. So there's not much French opera anywhere here.
Right.
So let's start. Let's start with Figaro.
With Noce, yeah.
Let's start with yours.
So am I going first? So I think this is a good format, just to make sure we're not comparing apples and oranges, as we're going to look at to distinguish between studio recordings, live audio recordings, and video recordings, right?
Right.
Which seems the most sensible way to think about this. So yeah, I think with the studio recordings of Noce, there's obviously a million out there, and I guess the big three you'd say, I'm sure you'd agree, are probably Kleiber, Giulini, and Schulte, huh? Which sort of covers also the whole span of sort of mid-century, great mid-century studio recordings until the 80s, huh?
And old-fashioned Mozart singing too.
And yeah, to a certain degree, sure. But to that point, actually, I would say that my favorite studio Noce is the Usman, the kind of the more period recording. There's an alarm going off somewhere in my building. The more like period recording, and it has a fantastic cast, and it's in it's a very different kind of Mozart than I think you're used to hearing if you listen to a lot of Carry On and Schulte. And it has really great performances from Barbara Bonney and Arlene Auger and Della Jones. I love that recording a lot, and I find that particularly of all the Mozart operas, that Nozze rewards that very kind of sprightly, light-footed approach really well. And so yeah, that's my favorite is the Östman recording from Dottingham.
For me, I would go with one of the big three, the big bone Mozart recordings that you mentioned earlier. I would go for the Schulte Notze.
Yeah.
I go for that Notze because it has, in my opinion, the best cast among all the major studio recordings on record. You have Thomas Allen's Count, you have Kira Tikanowa's Countess, you have the Susanna of Lucio Pop, and this is an interpretation and a musical realization that I find unrivaled on recording. You have Flicka's.
Is Pop Susanna?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's great.
As Countess, and Flicka is Cherubino. Missing one. Oh, Sam Raimi's Figaro.
Yeah, which is interesting because you sort of that cast to me always sort of begs for Jose Van Damme.
Which you will see in another Schulte.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure because you're gonna pick for video. You were saying a very similar, but it's the Schulte cast in Paris, right? And it's a similar cast. Well, you go ahead and I guess you do yours.
No, I love the Schreller for two reasons. I think Schreller captures the drama of Nozze Figaro in a very intelligent way. It's traditional, but it's not staid. I think he gets away to block the actors or the singers very well within the context of their production. And of course, the singing you have Janovitz.
I think that's the key. That's the big difference for me is between swapping Raimi for Van Damme and switching Kiri for Janowitz. Makes a big difference. I don't know. I love Janowitz's Countess.
No, she's wonderful, and she and Susanna blend so beautifully in their duets.
Yeah.
So definitely my top choice for video. There are many interesting productions that have come over the years, but as far as old-fashioned Mozart singing that I love and that I unfortunately haven't heard or experienced in the house, I go back to those two performances. And what's your Nozze pick for video?
My Nozze pick for video is interesting because we were talking before about maybe our favorite productions of Nozze, which I love the Guth from Salzburg with Anna, right? But it's there's so many wacky parts of that performance, especially Harnoncourt, that I couldn't pick that one. And so I think I'm going to actually swing the other way and go sort of traditional and pick the Haitink from Glyndebourne with Finley and Fleming.
Oh, that's a great cast.
Yeah. It's not the most interesting production, but it's well acted, and it's just really well performed by all the singers, and I'm a big Haitink fan, sort of all around good conductor. That's my pick for best video.
I think it's very interesting that for Glyndebourne, they always achieved these very sincere productions of Mozart's operas. They were not all,
at least at that time. Yeah, there was a sort of late 80s, early 90s thing going on. I have no insight onto who was running the theater, but
even up to the Così from a couple of years ago with Mia Parrish and.
Oh yeah, that's Così, the Heitner.
Sincere, yeah, the Heitner was very sincere, very well sung. Maybe not the most spectacular.
They tend to be a little straightforward.
Yes, but very wonderful, and I can see the Glyndebourne Nozze that you mentioned falling within that category. It's production,
and it's really Fleming at her one of the roles that she was best in when she was still very young. Well, not that young, but how old was Renee? What was that? 94. That makes Renee Probably my age. Oh God. But yeah, I love that one. And so then audio recording night, we skipped over live audio, which mine connects to yours. Which my choice for live audio is the Schulte. It's a Schulte recording from Versailles. And it's again a similar combination of that cast that we were talking about, but in place of Pop, it's Frenny, and in place of Alan, it's Beckier. So it's Jose Van Damme is there, and Janowitz, and Flicka,
I mean,
and it's a fantastic recording. But it's from several years before the I can't remember exactly what the date is, but it's early 70s. So it's a couple of years before the Paris show, and then the studio record, which was I think either 80 or 81.
is it available on streaming?
No, I think you can pick it up on Opera Depot though, or I can email it to you.
Yeah,
But it's good sound. It's decent sound anyway.
yeah, I'd love to.
It's beautiful, and Frenny, and I mean, as much as I love Pop in that role, Frenny is absolutely terrific. I mean, that was shortly after her when she was still singing things like Nanetta, you know.
Yeah, I could see Franny blending well with that early Mozart, early Franny.
Mm-hmm.
That voice. She was also the Nanetta in the Schulte
Yes.
house, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always merge the Schulte and Carry On cast in my head, but it's Moffo and Carry On, and it's Frenny on the Schulte Falstaff. Yes.
I would have plus the Schulte women in the Carrion, and the men
No
from.
love for no love for Anna Moffo.
I love Animov. We'll keep Animov, but Franny and Animov. Well, let's move on to my notes if you're off top. My
Sorry.
favorite notes is the 19. I can't remember if it was 1977 or 71. It was the recording of. It was a studio. No, not a studio. It was a live recording of when Karajan returned to the Vienna Opera, and it starred Toma Vicentov, Kotrubas as Susanna.
If it's Katrubis, it's got to be later, huh? I think it's 70. It's got to be later 70s.
Probably 77.
Mm.
So there was a period when Karajan had left the opera. I think he stopped conducting after 64, which is when he was ousted. Some weird politics happened during that time, but he had an appearance.
He stopped conducting in Vienna, you mean?
Right. And when he returned, he had revived some operas, which include this fantastic Notze. He also had Van Damme, and
right.
I believe Tom Krause was the Count, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right.
So fantastic, really, really fantastic cast, and it's old-fashioned Mozart. It's far more sprightly than the studio recording that featured a very similar cast.
From the late 80s. That was way later in the 80s, right? I don't know the date on that one.
I just remember that the Carrion had conducted another Nozze di Figaro with the same cast, but where the studio recording was plotting this live performance was fantastic.
It's interesting when that happens because you've commented before that tends to happen with Abato, that there's an extra bit of caffeine in the live recordings. And I wonder what that, obviously people tend to be more when we would say hardlined, when something's being set down permanently, you tend to be a little more careful.
When you're being
sometimes.
Well, these artists tended to command the best cast, like Carrion, the best singers. And I think when you have the energy of those singers giving a great performance and the audience responding to that, it brings out of you at the same time.
Right. It's true.
Abato's Falstaff, case in point, there was a Falstaff.
That's right. You love that Falstaff. That's the Desderi Falstaff, yeah?
No, there's a Raimondi Falstaff.
Oh, that one. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mixed them up.
I don't think Desderi sang with Abato on any recorded performance. And Abato rarely.
I'd have to check that.
Yeah, there was it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube and has a fantastic young cast.
Yeah,
It
it's
has
from like, it's from like Bologna or Ferrara or one of those.
around one of those Mahler chamber orchestra performances. I thought
Yeah.
there are a couple of performances from that series, from that series that I just love with Antonacci and Melanie Diener. And you're like, Melanie Diener's like this tall, and Antonacci is like this short.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
really good.
we'll get to that in a bit, I think,
We should,
because once we
yeah.
move on to Don Giovanni, which is the second Ruth Bader Ginsburg favorite that we'll talk about. Um, and Don Giovanni is one of my very favorite operas. And so studio recordings are very interesting because they tend to be really uneven. I don't think, and they all are. Several of them are very different. And there's a whole clutch of semi like mediocre ones that came out in the '80s, all kind of combined.
Carion's 80s recording.
The Carry On one, the Haitink one came out at that time. The Kubelik one came out at that time, which everyone hates except for me because it has Julia's Donna Anna. And Auger actually sings Elvira, which is an interesting swap.
How do you say her name, Auger or Auger?
I think it's Auger. I hope it's Arlene Auger because otherwise I'm going to sound like an idiot to whoever watches this. But I think it's Arlene Auger.
Okay.
But anyway, so my favorite recording of Don Giovanni, and I'm going to make a bunch of enemies on this show, I think, is the Fritschei, which is a controversial one because of DFD.
I think it was one of the roles that actually worked for his voice. I think Mozart and FD were just fine. I'm not I'm not very fond of his instrument's color, but he's still Mozart.
It's very driven, but the highlight of that one, obviously, for me is the conducting, which I think is terribly exciting. It's really fast at times too, and I'm kind of amazed. But that cast, you've got Uranats as Donna Anna, Maria Stader as Donna Elvira, and Siegfried as Zerlina, which is also sort of a weird one. I don't know how much Siegfried sings Zerlina.
Did she sing any of the other Donnas during her career? Because I know that Siegfried had sung roles in Figaro and Così. I'm not sure if she was as frequent of a Nozze cast member. Is there?
I don't know about Nozze, but I don't. But as the Donnas, I'd have to check. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to put her as an Ina.
It's a very ripe voice for an Ina.
Yeah, but it's a great. I mean, it's really exciting. It's in great sound. I love that record. But I know that it's not the most popular. Kind of like Nozze, everybody kind of focuses on the Giulini, right? With Joni.
That was my first. So the Giulini was my first Nozze. The second was actually the Fritschei.
Your Nozze or Giovanni?
Giovanni.
Giovanni, yeah.
Yeah, I got the first recording I purchased was the EMI Great Recordings of the Century.
Yeah.
That entire series, that gold package with the black background.
Yes.
We're not talking about the previous, because the Great Recordings of the Century series had actually been part of EMI's catalog for some years.
I love that that's so confident of them to be like, these are the great recordings of the century that just happen to be EMI.
Well, many of them are great. Many of them.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of the Fidelio, but yeah.
And the Tristan by Fort Wangler, et cetera, et cetera.
And
The Tosca. But I first purchased the Don Giovanni by Giulini, but I found the singing excellent. I never warmed up to it.
Yeah.
You could recognize a recording for how excellent it is. But it doesn't quite, capture your imagination as other performances do. And there are actually two recordings that I've considered. I was trying to balance between two recordings as my favorite Dons. This is an opera that I've had a love-hate relationship with because every time I've seen it in the theater, I've been bored. Well, yeah. Not great. You don't have great Mozart singers. The conducting is plodding, and Act One goes on forever. I just want to cut out of the story. It's like, can we just focus on the two Donnas? But there are some performances, like there's one. I will talk about this in the video part. but the two performances that really captured my attention were the Haitink one from Lineborn,
Mm-hmm.
which you recall the Haitink, which you mentioned earlier, and the other one is the Crips one from Vienna
Oh,
with Siepi.
that's a, mm-hmm.
The reason that I think Siepi is Don Giovanni. You cannot.
Right.
There's no other singer that would rather hear in the part of Don Giovanni than Cesare Siepi. And what I loved about Siepi is that his bass had all these colors that embodied this very seductive cavalier anti-hero so beautifully that no baritone would ever capture it to the same degree.
Yeah, and that's interesting because the based on Giovanni's have sort of fallen out of favor. You don't hear it very often anymore. I guess it was only a couple of years ago that I heard D'Arcangelo sing Don Giovanni.
He's usually Leporello, right?
He's Leporello in the Gardener recording, which we'll get to in a second. But no, I heard him sing Don Giovanni, and his Leporello was Erwin Trott, who frankly stole the show, and that was the Minkowski performance. Minkowski was conducting that in San Francisco.
Interesting.
Yeah, terrible production, but
but if you haven't listened to the Crips in years, I checked it out again last night, and because it had Siepi, I was looking for Siepi performances. Is there one other Siepi recording that I wasn't very warm to, which is the one with Nilsson, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I didn't really like that one. But
that one has a whole raft of problems. Yes.
But this one has Della Casa.
Yep.
It has Zandanko Hildeguden, Fernando Correda, and Vermont. Great classic Mozart cast. And
that cast is really close to the Metropolis, the Salzburg, right?
Which is my favorite live recording.
Nice transition there. But that has Grimmer.
Grimmer and
Della Casa.
Della Casa, yes. That's correct.
Streich.
Rita Streich, yes, that is correct. I mean, that cast was like a fixture at Salzburg in those Don Giovanni recordings. Like 2 years before that, I think they recorded a video of the opera with also with Siepi at the title role, but you had
I've seen that video, bits of it anyway.
In color too.
Mm-hmm.
One wonders how they captured the whole thing, but yeah, that was probably one of my favorite video performances. For me, my favorite live one is either Furtwängler or the Metropolis. I would probably go for the Metropolis because he just injects with so much energy.
Yeah. My live pick is what I was just saying is The Gardener, which is technically a video, but it's semi-staged, so I'm calling it audio.
Still a video.
It is, yeah. It's like whatever. I could be, but I'm calling it live audio. But I love that performance. That's Gilfrey and Orgona Shova and Charlotte Mangiano. Marjono. I can actually pronounce things tonight. And parterre favorite Silvestrelli as the commendatore.
Is it your favorite?
I was being sarcastic.
Okay, I've never heard of anyone talk about Silvestrelli, but I know that he sings in San Francisco a lot.
Yeah, no, most people I think don't really like him, but yeah, he's saying I heard his Hagen in the ring last time in San Francisco, which the less said about that, the better. But he's a great commendatore, and he gets to like carry Rod Gilfrey off at the end. I love that performance.
Rod Gilfrey. Rod Gilfrey, I like Rod Gilfrey a lot.
Yeah, I was trapped in an elevator with him once, and he's very big.
I was going to see him. I was planning to see him in New York next summer in Fin de Partie, the Courtag Opera, because Phil is doing that. I'm not sure if it's happening, but if anyone, if New York, let's say, regains some semblance of normalcy, or the performing arts scene does, I would really make a trip to go to see Fin de Partie. I think it would be very interesting, and I wonder too if they would perform the opera in English or in French or whatever mix of languages.
I didn't know.
It'd be interesting to hear. But yeah, let's go back to Rod Gill.
Back to Don Giovanni. Yeah, no, it's a great cast, and Charlotte Madrono is fantastic as Don Elvira, and yeah, that's my pick. Video, since I've decided that The Gardener is not a video, despite it being video recorded. Video is actually, I would have to say, our old friend Claudio. With Keenly Side, and I think that's another one that's either Bologna or Ferrara, and I can't remember which one.
I didn't realize there was a Claudio Don video.
Yeah, it's the same. It's a really similar cast to the studio recording, but like we were just saying, it's got a little bit of extra energy. But it's Keenly Side, Turfel, Remigio, and then what's really good is, in my opinion, is that it's not Isakowski, like on the studio record, it's Antonacci, and it's a very exciting Don Elvira. And I think D'Arcangelo is Mazzetto, which he does really well. So that's my pick for video.
Who's the Zerlina?
The Zerlina, I have no. I don't remember. I don't tend to.
The Zerlina make or break it for me. If you get a cute soubrette.
Yeah, it's because I don't think, and I'd have to rewatch it again, but I don't. The key Zerlina scene is always the often cut shaving scene, and if you don't put that in, then I don't get that excited about Zerlinas.
Let's see, who is the Zerlina in the video? You don't have your spreadsheet?
I don't have my spreadsheet. I'm trying to not check here.
Okay, I'll just check that some.
And your favorite video is going to get me all hot and bothered. I can tell already.
Oh, of course. This is the one that gives you a special cat smile. It's the Ivo van Hove, which we were supposed to see at the Met. Was it this season or in the next? Van Hove production from Paris with Philippe Jordan conducting, and it has a great cast that includes Jacqueline Wagner as Don, Nicole Carr as Don Elvira, Elsa Dreisig, Salzburg's excellent
Fiordiligi
as Zerlina. So that gives it, that's a plus for me. And you have Etienne Dupuis as the Don Giovanni. I'm going to save your favorite for last. It's his Philippe Sly.
Sly, I think.
Is it Sly? Sly?
I'm convinced it's Sly.
Well, he's Canadian, so it can go either way. Look at you.
That's the gun one, right? Where like the thing is that Don Giovanni has a gun, and he's not a noble. He's just a man with a gun.
Yes.
Yeah.
It worked for me because I love the energy between the performers, and it's like a throwback to old Mozart singing. They don't sound period. It's not a period.
Interesting.
And you have credible large voices that have succeeded in other repertory. Dupuis was the Rodrigo in Paris during the Italian revival with Luisi and Alania. And Jacqueline Wagner has sung a lot of big roles, like I think she's going to be featured in Tielemann's Meistersinger recording from Dresden, which is coming out.
Interesting. She's an Ava voice then.
Ava voice. And Nicole Carr, who was a superb Fiordiligi, she was a superb Fiordiligi in the Cognac revival with Harry Bickett. And I thought that it was just an all-round fantastic performance. It's a throwback to old.
Yeah. Great Mimi too, Nicole Carr.
Yes.
In Space Bohem, my favorite.
Who directed Space Bohem?
Space Bohem is Klaus Guth.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Paris. You've never seen Space Bohem? We need to fix that. It's La Boheme set in with astronauts. It's so good.
I normally don't watch a lot of opera since I have to fixate on stuff. But then once in a while,
we need to have Philippe Sly be in more operas so that we all pay closer attention to what was happening on screen.
I mean, you.
I certainly would. Just
Okay. Okay.
moving right
A
along.
G-rated. This is, I don't know if Parterre is a G-rated site, but this is a.
Oh, it's not a G-rated. We're allowed to swear. We're
Okay, let's move on to opera number three, Rosenkavalier.
Rosencavalier. I'll go first, I guess. Well, that one, classically, I guess there's always the distinction between, or the rivalry between Carry On and Schulte, especially on this record, right, or on this particular opera. Um, but my Rosencavalier pick is the for studio is the old one, the Kleiber, the Deco.
One that's a very Wiener-esque recording.
Yeah.
So from that period of the recording period of Decca, where they were committing a lot of the very first studio recordings to disc. You got the very first Frauen shot in from that period. I don't know,
Hmm.
in the 2000s, you could get a bunch of these in sale. There was like a cream colored background, some black and white photo.
Yeah, they had it's called like the legendary.
Was that,
It has like the little circle stamp kind of looking thing on in the corner. Yeah.
and then it's like a black and white photo of the conductor or the main singer. In this case, it was what for the I think for the
Well, it must be raining.
it was either Reining or Uninatis Octavian.
Yeah.
A great
Who I like. I love her Octavian.
That's one of the great.
Beautiful performance. And Reining, obviously, I don't think she's necessarily at her best on that recording, but there's obviously she brings a ton of authority to the role. You've got Gooden, and you've got who's the Italian singer? It's Dermota, right?
Was Dermota, yes.
Yeah, who just sounds fantastic.
Who was Fox again? Do you remember who
The
that?
it's not Edelman. I think it's Weber.
Yes, that's it.
I'd have to double check, but I think it's Ludwig
Makarian.
Weber.
Yeah, Edelman is in the Carion recording.
Right, right,
But yeah,
right. With Betty Blackhead,
evil incarnate.
who's a big problem on both the Mozart recordings that we were just talking about a second ago.
Yeah, it's funny because all the magazines and all the reviewers who whom I learned how to develop my taste in opera from the Amazon reviewers.
Oh, they all loved her.
They all loved her, but then
Yeah,
I
I don't
never.
know. People also used to put lead in their gasoline, so you don't listen to every 70s.
uh, for me, my favorite Rosenkavalier studio recording is the Schulte. Best choice.
Yeah,
No, but
it's
no better.
fantastic.
Decca wins for a studio.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love that recording too. I love Crispin. I love Pavarotti. I love Yvonne Minton. I love Helen Donath. That whole
I love.
and I
Minton has this really aggressive, not really like brashy, but still,
yeah
but it's a very aggressive, boyish sound.
yeah it's Aussie. I think it's super cute.
Although I've always said that Yvonne Minton sounds a bit like a saxophone.
I can see that. I can hear that.
Which is why when she sings Geschwitz, it just sounds so jazzy and it's like the color of the voice is just perfect for the role.
Yeah,
But she's
no, that's a great record, and there's a part. I mean, the trio is so funny because Crespin's voice is about 3 times bigger than the other two.
it goes for the high
Absolutely, I
dinosaur.
love it. It reminds me of almost like an organ and sound when you press the pedal and the baffles, and everything opens up and the volume goes to full max. And she really lets one rip at the end of the trio, and it's thrilling. I don't know if it's correct, but it's thrilling to hear.
So I'm curious, did you ever listen to any of the Unnatural Acts of Opera podcasts, like those early podcasts from Parterre?
Yeah, I'm sure I did. Yeah.
So in the Frauenausstatten, and I remember this because JJ's 1980 Frauenausstatten with Dognani and Gwyneth Jones, Colo, Barrett, etc. That was my first.
Oh.
And I remember that at the very so I don't remember if it was Milton. So JJ had this like alter ego and Milton, and one of those two, or maybe it was just JJ or La Checa. I don't think
Yeah.
she had a persona, but it was either La Checa or Milton. Said at the very end of the opera, with those four voices, Gwyneth Jones, Barry, etc. It sounded like four dinosaurs were just screaming. Four raptors, screaming the high C at the very end. And in the case of Chris Pine, I think it sounds like a T-Rex emitting a high C.
Yeah.
The loudest high C, apparently.
And I don't know. My German's not good enough to tell you if it's particularly Viennese style. I always thought that Chris Pine had very good German.
She's like German, but what she does, what I didn't like about Schwarzkopf's performance was how fussy and
it's always the case for her, yeah.
She was just like making a fuss about every little word, and Renee.
It's funny because we're getting off topic a little bit, but the only Schwarzkopf performance that I can actually stand is maybe her fussiest one, but it's okay because she's just first lady on the Klemper Zauberflöte.
What a great trio of ladies! It's a European tradition or a German tradition, I think, to cast like stars.
To like overcast your three ladies.
The ladies, and they did it as well at Salzburg when Furtwängler conducted. You had that Wagnerian soprano, Gertrude Grob-Prandtl as one of the as the
first.
So yeah,
that's great.
Tradition in Europe. They don't do it as much in the U.S. Rattle had a really good. When he did Zauberflöte in Baden-Baden, he had Annick Massey, I think that's how you say her name, and Nathalie Stutzmann
fantastic!
Kojana. So it's Kojana, Massey, and Stutzmann.
That's a good trio.
Go back to Strauss.
Back to Strauss.
We spoke about our favorite studio recordings. Let's talk about our live recordings.
Live recordings. Live audio for me, I think it's kind of a toss-up, but I think mine's going to be a carry-on recording from Salzburg again. I'm cheating because I got Urinats again a couple of years later, but it's Urinats, Telekasa, and Gooden, and Edelman this time.
I know you don't like ordering the same thing, but they're great performance. You don't like ordering the same dish in a restaurant, but
that's right.
You can have the same thing. They're great.
Or eating the same thing 2 days in a row.
You don't eat it in the same meal, and you wouldn't listen to Rosenkavalier 2 days in a row unless you were me.
Variety is the spice of life, my friend.
I listen to Le Troyan every day.
Oh my God, I don't even do that, and I'm nutty about that. So.
Just to absorb it, but
Yeah.
So you could have singers overlapping. I had Schulte overlapping twice in Notze.
Yeah.
So
but this is a similar cast but different conductor, and my problem on the carry-on, the studio carry-on Rosenkav is not carry-on, it's the singers, specifically one singer. Other than that, it's quite frothy, and I think it's a good recording, but the live recording is just better cast.
Yes, actually, yeah. Is that there's a video version?
There might be a video of that. I haven't seen it. I've just heard it.
No, I prefer that performance to the studio one as well.
Mm.
So my live recording is Carlos Kleiber.
Kleiber Feast.
Kleiber Feast, yes. I think he championed the opera, if possible, to an even greater degree than his father, and he commanded so many wonderful casts.
There's that fantastic video on YouTube that's just him conducting, right? It's like what do they call it in sports? But like the coach cam, and they just put a camera right on the conductor, and it's all recorded, and it's fantastic to watch.
Well, there's a footage of his Tristan too from Bayreuth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's like a black and white really grainy, and you can see how he moves his huge arm span. And you have those very aquiline features that Roman knows of his. See how mesmerizing he must have been as a conductor. But my favorite.
I'm not sure if I have a Roman nose.
Okay, I don't know how to follow that, but let's go. Let's record Claire Watson, Fassbender. Was it Pop?
This is your choice, not mine. But yeah, I think it's Pop as Sophie.
Pop. Because there are two Kleiber performances that I love, and both had very similar singers. And the Kleiber one from Orfeo.
Yeah, that's the one you're talking about.
Yes.
It's speaking of streaming queens. It's available on streaming services.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the Claire Watson and who's Ox? Is it Ritter British?
it has Ritterbusch, yes, and
Yeah,
yes, Ritterbusch.
and the Italian singer is Gerhard Unger. Yeah,
I believe so. Yes.
everyone. My favorite David.
In the Kubelik.
Yeah, and a couple others too.
I think this is a great performance of the opera.
It's a very piquant voice.
There aren't many live Rosenkavalier, surprisingly. I think
Surprisingly, yeah, I know.
I mean
I
you'll
think
hear
it's
pirates, but nothing that's been released by one of the labels.
hmm
And by that I mean like Orfeo, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember who released the Salzburg. The Carry on Salzburg one that I mentioned is available on streaming. I don't remember who released it. Salzburg makes me feel like it's Orfeo, but I don't know. I can't picture the cover off the top of my head.
I think it was Deutsche Grammophon.
Maybe it was DG. Yeah.
It's one of those Salzburg series, like 100 years. They released that as part of the collection, along with the Caria 1962 Trovatore, the horrible.
Oh, that one, the awful. Oh yeah, and the
red
Frosch.
and yellow, the red and yellow.
Yeah. With Price has her like head flung back. It's a terrible image. I don't know why.
Don Carlo, really bad Don Carlo.
Oh, I hate that Don Carlo.
A really bad Don Carlo.
What was wrong with him? Why did he like the 4-act version? What's going on in that man's head?
I don't think the 5-act version was very popular during his time, and I think he.
Again, people were putting lead in their gasoline, so I'm convinced that's why.
Schulte was one of the. I think Caria.
He was a weird completist, right? Like Schulte was one of the guys that was. I think almost every opera that he recorded is uncut.
Yes. I mean, obviously, he wasn't able to put the entirety of Don Carlo because they didn't find some of the scenes until some of the.
Right. That was done after, and like Lord knows why he didn't record that in French, but no, like at that point, the Schulte Don Carlo is 5-act. It has everything that they knew about at the time.
And it was the Modena version, et cetera, et cetera.
And it's Modena, yeah.
Great. So yeah, probably let's go back to Rosenkavalier.
Yeah, we can get. Not get off on Don Carlo.
I watched the team. I wish Schulte would have done the Toyon. That would have been great. Okay, back to Strauss.
Okay, yeah, back to Strauss. Video Rosencavs. And I think we're gonna pick really similar ones if I remember when we talked about this last time. Because I'm gonna go. I think we're both going Kleiber, and I'm going Kleiber, late Kleiber.
Kleiber, yes.
With Felicity Lott, Barbara Bonney, and Sophie.
And Sophie.
And Kurt Moll, who had a great ox. And I have no recollection of who the Italian singer was on that one. I think he's not very good, and that's why I blocked it out of my head. And that's like the one. I think that's one of the flaws on that one. And it's the Schenk. It's the same Schenk production or similar one to the Met.
The one that's been had it for like a century.
Yeah, but I think Von Otter's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
In that. I think Lott's fantastic.
Von Otter was a great Octavian on the high tank recording. Another really.
And she's so tall, and she has like, I don't think she's particularly masculine looking, but sort of more mannish. If that makes sense.
She looked like a noble.
Very yes, and I find that the most compelling presentation as well, which I thought was the weak point. Is the weak point of the Carson.
She was just so regal.
Garancha.
Yeah, and Sophie. Garancha was.
Oh yes, yeah.
And Sophie was so regal. I think Aunt Sophie and Garancha are my favorite Octavians, and and Sophie and Garancha. And Garancha was more like a twunk.
I'm not even gonna touch that one. I don't know what to say.
But Aunt Sylvie was so,
I just remember the dancers. Like it was so distracting. They had everybody. They started ballroom dancing in the middle of the presentation of the Rose,
I didn't
and I wanted to throw something off the balcony because I was so
some parts of the production,
annoyed.
but I loved Garanche's performance, and I like for me she's the best Octavian ever.
You're gonna get hate mail too.
I'm gonna get so many hate mails from all the Vienna lovers. Bill, I'm sorry. I think Garanche.
So is the Carson your top video pick?
The top video is another Kleiber performance.
Another lots of Kleiber.
The Kleiber family owned this opera. Basically owned this opera. Either Schulte or Kleiber. There was a whole dynasty of There was a dynasty of Kleibers owning this opera for decades. And this is the one with Gwyneth Jones, who I think is the most interesting Marshallin on video. And Fassbender and Lucia Pop. Fassbender,
Yeah, no. Thank you.
And then there's Manfred Jungwirth, who was on the Schulte recording.
He's.
Very good.
I mean, again, I don't know enough German to tell, but he sounds very Viennese to me.
Viennese. And there's Ariza, who was a fine Italian tenor.
That's right, Ariza. We were just talking about him.
My favorite.
He seemed to do everything in the '80s. He was one of those he's like the male Studer, where it's just like we're recording an opera and there's a tenor part. Who can sing it? Francisco Ariza.
Ariza. You can sing.
Yeah.
One of those other roles is Ariza. He's a fine Italian tenor. He just
yeah, I would imagine so.
Like if he was just slightly more heroic, I think he would have been a much bigger name.
Interesting. Yeah, probably. The Hoffman's not very good, but anyway.
There's a great Rosenkavalier, and my favorite moment in that opera was the one that's etched in my memory at least is with Jones at the very end of Act One, just looking at the mirror at the very end of her monologue. It just the way Kleiber just fades that the act and Gwyneth's expressions.
That one's sort of dowdy for me. That production. It's not Schenk. Do you know who the director of that one was?
I don't remember who. I
just remember it's awfully it's a little.
It was Schenk. I think.
Really, it's not as pretty as the Vienna one.
No.
It's a bit drab.
No, the Vienna one was more beautiful, but I think this one was better acted.
I always think of that just because, because I study this sort of thing. But the interior of Faninal's house is always an interesting challenge for a set designer. I think to hit the nouveau riche, the Viennese nouveau riche, right on. And I think the Schenk does it really well. It looks lavish and cheap at the same time, or not cheap, but
ostentatious.
Yes. All right, so that's Rosenkavalier.
Let's go to Opera 4.
Opera 4 is Otello. Verdi's Otello, our first Verdi.
Does Kleiber have a monopoly on any of these?
I think he does. You will. I'm gonna pick a Kleiber for Otello.
I gave you that one, right?
There's two Kleiber Otellos, and they're pretty close. I think they're only a year apart. And one's very glamorously cast and is the Freni Domingo.
Yeah, the more
Cappuccilli from La Scala, and that's a great recording. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Munich Otello with Giulia, and also Cappuccilli. But it's Carlos Cosuta.
I gave you that recording, right?
You did. You gave it to me a couple months ago, and I love Giulia's Desdemona.
She's wonderful in that role.
Yeah, I don't know. I like. There's something about Desdemona that I think a lot of singers default to this sort of very passive, saintly woman, and I don't see that in the character at all. And Verdi. And Studer, I'd say, and a few others, sing Desdemona with a little more backbone, and I like that.
I don't love Studer's. Just I like her performance. I don't love the ensemble in that in the Chung. If I
In the oh yeah, you don't like the you just don't like the cast in general.
dislike Sergei Leifer because I can't stand his voice.
Yeah, it's a tough one, especially the Brindisi. It's very thick.
My favorite studio tello is the one with Scotto and Domingo and Cheryl Milnes.
Right, right. That's the one where Domingo, you can just tell that it was still such a lyric voice. I mean, that was early 70s, right? He was
70s.
still very, very young. Singing things. He's still singing things like Rodolfo and Alfredo.
Yes,
Um, and he's fearless on that recording. I think it's one of Domingo's very best recordings.
I
But
think too.
yeah,
And Cheryl Milnes, well, maybe not the most interesting. Yeah,
also one of his very best recording for someone who sang nearly everything.
yes.
Sorry about the noise. Um, nothing I can do about that. Yeah, great Mills. Who's Desdemona? You said Scotto?
And I think she. And speaking of other Destemos who chose to find a very different dimension to the character, I think
Mm-hmm.
probably captures the character better on record. And I can't quite verbalize this as beautiful as JJ does because JJ adores Scotto, and he understands how she transforms a phrase with her very innate and unique musicality.
Yeah, it's a great role for her. We're getting out of order, but she's my pick for video. Actually, it was a parterre. It was we had some video feature that JJ was trying out years ago. Maybe not years, maybe months. Who knows? But we watched the Met broadcast with Vickers and Scotto,
That's a great.
and it's not Milnes. It must be McNeil. Um,
No, that's a great.
as Iago, and it's beautiful. I mean, the costumes are ridiculous, but um,
I
and
don't know.
that was late Vickers, but good Vickers.
I don't actually know what I would pick for my um if I were to choose. So did I get to say my live hotel yet?
Oh, we're all out of order. I can't remember if you did.
So you mentioned the Yulia one, then we went to my studio.
Because
So
I haven't said my studio either, so we're all out of order. My
yeah,
bad.
so let's go through for your studio.
My studio. So I know I told you, like I'm torn because I think the Levine, I love it, but I don't adore it, and it's not my go-to one. I do like the Chung. I think Domingo sounds um, not as fearless or as youthful as he did, obviously, on the Levine record. But I really like the Chung, Life Circus notwithstanding. But I don't know if it's better than the Carry On, which I had forgotten about the other day, with Delmonico and Tibaldi.
The one basically the editor cast, but years later, the one where we were supposed to get Bastianini as Iago, but he got drunk
Yeah,
apparently.
oh, really? Is that the story? He was too drunk to do it? Because it's Protti, right?
Yeah, it was Aldo Protti, and that was supposed to be a
Mm.
Bastianini, um, but that was supposed to be a Bastianini project. But he showed up to the studio drunk, and they fired him and brought in Aldo Protti back. So it was basically the air
Interesting.
with the Viennese orchestra, and many years later, when Delmonico was not singing nearly at the same trumpet-like volume he used to sing.
Got it. Yeah, he's on fire in that record. It's a good one. It's a good one. And it's great because I think that's one of the very few Otello recordings that I know of that has the ballet. And I love a good Verdi ballet.
Yes, you're right. Carians does have the ballet, and not many of them do.
Yeah, and I have no idea what prompted that decision because I don't think I don't know. I can't imagine why they threw that in, and not even the Schulte does. Actually, now that I think about it, as I was just talking about, Schulte recorded everything
Schulte usually
uncut. I don't think the Schulte Studio Otello, which I like quite a lot, mostly from price.
the Kusuta one.
The Casuta and Price, yeah, yeah.
The Bakier was the
And Bakia, yeah, but I don't think it has the ballet on it, which is an interesting
yeah, that is
point. So anyway, what was your live Otello?
It's unfortunately cut, but I thought the Karajan Salzburg Otello with Vickers, Franny, and Glossop was my.
Hmm.
It's an excellent sound, 1971, but absolutely pristine. It sounds like a studio recording. The EMI studio recording is gone from Spotify and all other streaming services. But
Really?
yeah, it's like there's a whole clutch of Karajan recordings. That's
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the
yeah.
Peleus is gone and the Salome is gone with the only good Barons recording.
And also the other repeats, like the let's say the Aida with Franny and Carreras, all of
Oh,
those,
the second Aida, that's right.
and some other recordings are no longer on streaming services.
Is
But
his Mozart still around, or was he was doing Mozart on DG at the time?
yeah, anything EMI from the 70s is no longer in circulation.
Interesting,
Very
interesting.
very strange. But
And the
the
Tristan, as we said.
the Tristan is not there, and I think they should. That's criminal because I think it's one of the best Tristan recordings.
Yeah, I
But
think you're alone on that, but
um, but the 71 performance in Salzburg is superb. And Vickers,
yeah, I thought you were gonna go for the Lombard.
I love the Lombard, but I think you
Mm.
cannot have a greatest Otello list without Vickers.
Yeah, yeah.
And Frenny and Vickers work so beautifully in that performance. And Glossop is actually a very intelligent Iago. It's almost in the vein of Gerald, or at least Gerald Finley and Glossop remind me of each other, and their intelligent portrayals. Both are
Hmm.
Anglo, I don't know, we have Anglo speakers.
Yeah, well, Finley's Canadian, yeah.
Yeah, Finley's Canadian, and Glossop is British, I think. Um,
Imagine so.
but they capture so many complexities from this character better than,
Mhm.
well, I wouldn't say better than anything Gold.
Glossop is one of those singers that is that you for me anyway, like you hear one bad performance and early in your listening and you kind of write them off. And he's on the Toyons that I hate.
Mm.
And I never forgave him. And I should probably cut him some slack and listen to some more things.
Is he Koreb? Or is
I think so on the first Davis, yeah.
interesting. Um, I thought he was very good as a very good Iago, but I would go for that for Vickers, and I think this was not nearly as mannered. I still prefer the his performance in the Seraphim studio, but also Riznik's weird Desdemona. So
Oh, blech, blech.
so
Horrible.
I'm gonna take the Salzburg one.
Yeah, it's
But
good choice.
for video, what would you choose?
I said the Levine,
Oh yeah, that's right.
Levine with Vickers. There's not that many good Otello videos,
No,
which I realized when I was thinking about this.
I
Um,
I was not decided yesterday, but I think I found one that I thought I'd forgotten about for some time. But the one with Domingo, his very last Otello from 2001.
oh wow, is that with Renee?
No, 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 that was I think that was the Rene one was from the mid 90s.
Oh, okay.
The 2001 Otello was captured during the Verdi centenary and had Muti conducting, and
Uh-huh.
Nucci as Iago and Barbara Frittoli as Desdemona.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic performance. Oh wait, we were talking about Abato. Abato.
Yeah, because I thought you were gonna pick the Abato
I mean,
Otello.
it's a great performance too. I think Abato is the best conductor. I just don't
Well,
like.
the reason that you didn't pick that one is because I don't think you were watching. You were listening instead of watching, and
Laura.
you missed Akira's long shirtless scene, which is well worth the price of admission.
Does he do the same thing for you that Philip Slee does?
Yes.
See, you have your Cheshire smile right now. Like this.
I'm a very transparent person. I can't help it.
Like I can see you when you're like feeling all the feelings. That's the smile that you get when I talk about Philip Slee. And I guess Kura for you too.
Kira does it for me.
Right.
Love it.
Well, I guess we're done with RBG's favorite Verdi opera. I think, I
Yes.
think she had mentioned that what was her favorite Verdi opera? She didn't. She was talking about Tello and something else. We can always revisit that next time.
Well, Aida has the trial. Maybe she likes the courtroom scene in Aida.
I'll have to rewatch the video, but
I always think of there's a video of her receiving or presenting she's receiving some kind of honorary doctorate somewhere, maybe Harvard, I don't know. And Placido Domingo's there also receiving some kind of award, and he sings to her to the tune of Celeste Aida. It's very cute.
Of course.
And she like gets all flustered. It's very adorable.
She's adorable.
Yeah.
Whether we would have another person like that who supports the art form as much as she did.
Well, the joke is that Scalia did too, and they would go together to the Washington National.
I actually saw Ginsberg at the Met many like more than a decade ago.
Who?
Ginsberg. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
But I saw her at the Met, and people wanted her.
Yeah.
I didn't see her with Scalia, but they both justices were the subject of an opera. Right, they wrote an opera about them.
Really? That's amazing. I love that.
And this guy who plays Scalia actually looks like Scalia.
Huh?
The singer who played Ginsberg, not so much.
I can't imagine. So yeah. Well, let's keep it moving along and not to get too can't take too long. So our last one is Fanciulla, yeah.
There aren't many recordings.
And yeah, that's a problem. Is we just went through 4 incredibly popular operas with massive discographies, and then we arrive at Fanciulla, which has a very slim discography.
Well, here's the thing about Fanciulla. The reason that she included Puccini in her top 5 was because she said it needs to have Puccini.
Right.
So she and I have very different tastes because I don't.
Well, I got you to like Toyant, so maybe I'll get you to like Fanciulla eventually.
I like Fanciulla. There aren't just that many great performances.
Yeah, no, I think there's only 3 studio Fanciulla recordings
One was
made.
But she said that
is that studio? I suppose no. I was thinking there's really just Tebaldi, Nilsson, and Noblet.
Oh, the one that was supposed to have Callas and Gobi and Corelli.
Right, which transformed into Nilsson.
Gibbon and
who's the tenor? Gibbon?
No, Gibbon was the tenor. I don't remember who the Rance was.
It's someone weird. I don't remember either.
But Matic was the conductor.
And it's Matic, yeah.
For me, the reason that she mentioned Fanciulla was because it was the only opera where the soprano actually had any agency.
Oh, sure.
It's a very beautiful explanation she provided in that YouTube video. What she said was, all these poor Puccini sopranos, like Mimi dying, Poor Butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
But Fanciulla is the only opera where the salvation of the tenor and basically the wonderful ending at the end was enabled by Minnie's choosing to take matters into her own hands and to cheat.
Right.
Basically, if she didn't act, well, Ramirez was fucked. And if she acted and she lost the card game, she would get the short end of the stick.
Yeah, but not only, importantly, I think for that opera is not only does she have agency and does she take matters into her own hands in a way that a lot of opera heroines don't, but she's also there's a moral aspect to Fanciulla that I find very beautiful in that it's from the beginning, from the Bible lesson to the very end, it's an opera about forgiveness as well.
Yes, that scene
and the supreme truth of love, right? And I can barely get through the end of that opera without just breaking into sobs because I find that the whole ending, last 5 minutes of that opera are tremendously moving. But especially the idea of the supreme truth of love. And that's why I don't, which is an interesting thing. We're talking about Puccini and all the other operas are, Bohème is a sort of rom-com that ends tragically and it has sort of this cliched view of love, especially the meet cute that like she comes in with the candle and can't find her key and all that shit. I find that very dull.
Yeah.
And the love story, whereas the love story and the moral
It's about loneliness.
aspect of Fanchula, it's very much about loneliness, but also they've already met each other and they're like, oh, remember that time in Monterey and you saw me and with the thing and they also have a very slow courtship in Act One before then she's like, yeah, come over to my place tonight. And then she gets all nervous about it. It's just it's a much more, in my opinion, a much more mature adult love story. They're two very well-rounded people instead of, Mimi and Rodolfo, I don't think are that well-rounded or interesting as characters.
I,
And that's why I also have a problem whenever I see a production where Rance, I think it's the Vienna where he puts a gun to his head, which I don't like that at all, because that's not
Konechny, you mean? With Konechny?
with Thomas. Yeah. I think that's the one where they go up in a hot air balloon too.
Yes.
Which, but no, I think Mimi. I keep saying Mimi instead of Minnie. I think Minnie has to forgive Rance, and he has to live with that. And I don't know. I find that beautiful. I'll shut up now. But favorite, yeah. So Studio Fanchulas, there's not a whole lot of options, and so I'll go with the major one, the Capuana, with Tibaldi and Delmonico.
That's a great.
I think it's actually kind of crappy sound.
Yeah.
And you can't, which is what's so interesting. The Matichich is almost completely differently balanced. They sound like different operas in places. They're so the tinta are very different. But I do love that one. I love Tibaldi in it. I love Delmonico in it. I love McNeil in it. It's a good recording.
The Meta one is my choice because it was the first Ventula I ever owned.
It's definitely richer, more a more modern sound.
It's a very well balanced cast. It doesn't have the powerhouse vocals of Tibaldi or Delmonico, but it has great sound. I thought Meta was in good form, and you had Domingo. Domingo.
Oh, and that wasn't made too far away from the big Meta Turandot either, right?
Really? Was it that? When was the Meta?
I think they're both mid-70s.
I thought that was
Is it later? Is it 80s? I don't know.
Ventula was an 80s project.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, Meta used to be a very propulsive. I think a fairly good Puccini conductor.
He was a very exciting conductor, and in the 70s when he started in Vienna, he was really, really good. And something happened to him in New York. New York destroys people except yeah.
Live, audio live. I mean, I feel like it's one of the best live recordings of it, most exciting live recordings of anything. Is the Metropolis, right?
My choice too, but then you didn't like me to have the same.
I think we can agree because otherwise you have to go. I mean, there's not a lot of other options. There's the Frazzoni.
The Frazzoni is probably my second favorite, and I do.
Yeah, it's very exciting. That's a great recording. But the Metropolis is it's one of those, and you can hear the prompter half the time. He's got a very shrill voice, and the sound comes in and out. But there's so many details on the recording that I love. Well, first you get the uncut or the duet. The second act duet has the additional music that Puccini added later that everybody hates, that no one performs because it's a ginormous double high C that everybody I think wants to cut out. But I've listened to that recording so many times that whenever they don't do that extra material, I get thrown for a loop. I'm like, wait, what happened to the end of the duet?
Was Guelphy the Rance in that recording?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's a bear of a sound. It's a great, amazing voice.
Old-fashioned Italian band.
Yeah, very much so.
Extinct nowadays, but maybe Um,
There's so many great weird little things though in that there's like at the very very end of the opera, like you can tell that whatever, I mean, no, I don't think anyone's seen it. There's no video, so I have no idea what they're doing on stage. But I think they're either getting in a wagon and going away because it's, you know, Adio a California.
yeah,
But like you can tell that whatever stage business they have to do, they haven't managed it, and so Metropolis just has to hold the adios, and like this is a really long chord sequence. So while they figure out whatever they have to do to get off stage, it's pretty. I find it great. I love it.
is that for Florence? Was it a Florence performance?
Yeah, it's a Firenze.
Roger Fiorentino, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great festival, and Metropolis got so much. Wonder was able to accomplish so much during that period.
Yeah, and then he died. He died so young. Well, not that young, but youngish, young for a conductor. Which is also true of Fritchai from back when I was talking about Don Giovanni. Fritchai died when he was, I think, 47, 48, something like that.
And Metropolis did so many amazing things. I mentioned the Don Giovanni earlier, but there's also the Electra with Varney. So many great performances. You know, I sometimes wonder
That Electra is amazing.
what would he have made out of Tristan had he
Yeah, who knows?
his Wozzeck is also very good. There's a Wozzeck.
It's the first Wozzeck, isn't it?
His first Wozzeck was, I think it was in English.
Yeah, and the only, well, I think so too, and it's the only Eileen Farrell full role, isn't it?
That's correct. It's great performance.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about video.
Yeah, even fewer options on this one, right?
There's lots of really bad productions.
There are. I was whining about the. Yeah, that's right. Because I was whining about the Carson. How normally I like Carson, but I thought that was hot garbage.
So your favorite one, I'm assuming, is
I think the best Fanciulla that I think I've seen, and sounds absolutely insane, but I think it was the last Met HD with when we all got to see Kaufman's Dick in New York. I'm sorry, Kaufman's Johnson. I'm sorry, Kaufman's Ramirez.
What a bad character name.
Dick Johnson.
I always call him Ramirez just to.
I do too. Just because I'm like I can't possibly.
It's like, this is kind of awkward. If you want to sell this off to people, and
so it's an opera about a cowboy named Dick Johnson.
It's like American name.
Oh, sorry, a bandito. Yeah.
It's a great performance, and Westbrook was very moving. I remember.
Yeah, she didn't have all the notes, that's for sure, but it's a character she's sung for a long time, and you know that shows when a performer has a lot of experience with a character.
Capture the ending so beautifully.
Yeah.
Like that the forgiveness scene, that was just so moving. I think you had written on parterre that you were in tears after that performance.
Probably, I can barely make it through that opera. Even a bad performance, that ending is a
little gesture. She just captured every little gesture, and it's unfortunate that in the live performance, I'm not sure if they took out some of the notes in when they committed the video to their
possibly, because there's a whole bunch of Minnie has like 3 or 4 just really cruel high notes.
And the Westbrook butchered one of them. I think
probably. I can't remember. We can go back and read what I was typing during the chat.
I remember when I was in the chat, I was like, "Holy crap! What just happened there?"
Yeah.
But the performance was so moving. It's like she looked the part, and there was she made every single gesture matter, and I think that it's one of the reasons why she won me over. I think overall it's just one note in a performance that more or less captured the part beautifully. Now, for me, if I were to choose a live or video one, it would be a vintage one.
But the Tokyo
with the Fabritis, yes, and I think the rant was Anselmo Colzani. I don't remember who the Ramirez was. But
I suppose I can look it up. What's this opera called? The Tokyo video. Limerili.
Never heard of him, but Stella was wonderful. That
Yeah.
the poker scene was potent, and I was just like, last night I was just watching a video of her and Bergonzi and Balo. I think also from Tokyo. My God, the Tokyo studio.
Wait, Stella Bergonzi in Balo?
Yes.
Nice, nice. So that's probably a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh, and it was just like this old-fashioned Italian singing. Um,
Oh, definitely.
a wonderful, wonderful scene. This is from Tokyo because you see a lot of Japanese subtitles there,
Yeah, whenever you see the Japanese subtitles, I love that.
and you know that that came
I
from.
just, I love the idea that there is like this like Italian summer camp where a whole bunch of them like went to Tokyo for a month or whatever to do a bunch of operas, and I'm sure they were paid very well, and the audience are always very enthusiastic, and yeah, I love those Tokyo videos.
There's a saying in the music industry for any like older band, let's say like if you're a boy band, if you're or from the 90s, or any older band like Guns N' Roses, you could always make band going to Asia for tours.
Yeah,
And I guess,
but I bet they had a lot of fun. Like
oh yeah, but for
they all knew each other. They all probably hated each other. Who knows?
opera, they all went to either Taiwan or Japan, Japan during those days because Japan was rich and they spent a lot of money on singers. And thankfully, we have all
Yeah.
preserved. Many of these performances are great, and Stella was outstanding. Later, after this video ends, I'll send you the Tekayo Sto from the Balo. It was like
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I'd love to see that.
incredible. But that's my pick for Fanchula. It's a black and white video, but
Mm-hmm.
the poker scene is just. Ugh.
The poker scene. Love the poker scene. It's got the same. It's got those Zalame strings.
I think you should. I think you should. If you haven't heard the Stella one in a while, I think maybe you should revisit it. She was
Yeah.
in the part, and um, maybe she didn't have quite the same vulnerability that Westbrook brought to the role.
Mm-hmm.
Stella was incredible in the part, even better than Tibaldi, even better than any of the ladies who did it in studio.
I'll have to. Yeah, I'll give that one a whirl.
But yeah, those are the five recordings, five operas that
5 operas, and those are our picks for Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I'm gonna pull up an article that I saw earlier. I didn't read this because I just wanted to surprise myself. In 2012, Alex Ross interviewed her and asked her what recordings were her what opera recordings were her favorites, and
Oh yeah, what did she say?
the Perlea Aida with Milanova and
Ugh.
Gershwin. That's not my favorite.
People love that record, and I'll never figure it out.
I didn't get it. I didn't get it either. But yeah, Warren and Barbieri in good sound, and Björling. Zinka's the kills it.
It's not good. It's funny. I got an Amazon. I got a used book offline once, an architecture book, but they shipped it to me in in the LP box for the Perlea Aida, and I got it in the mail. And I was like, what? I didn't. How drunk was I that I ordered of Aida on this Aida on vinyl, and then I opened it. It was a architecture. Yeah, so I still have it sitting around here somewhere. It's a good sense.
Her favorite Otello is the one with Domingos Coton Milne, so I guess we share the same favorite studio one.
That's cute.
Rusalka with Fleming, Hefner, Zajic, and Macros.
Love that record, yeah.
Julia Cesar with Triangle and Sills. Okay.
Okay.
She loved American singers. Don Giovanni with, oh, interesting. Siepi, Carena Danko, blah, 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 with Crips.
Oh yeah, I don't love that one, but Donko's interesting. Yeah, yeah.
It's not great. I just love Siepi, and there aren't that many good recordings studio recordings of that opera.
Right.
So it's by default because Siepi's in it, and it's not the other one with Nielsen and Price. That one.
That one actually, I kind of enjoy that one. Parts of it, mostly Leontine.
You're gonna have to convince me about Leontine again. I need to go through a. You did it for Troyan and well, I don't know. I think the Salzburg performance did it for me for Cozy.
Yeah, like a year ago, you were all anti-Mozart, so we're making progress.
I've always loved Notse, but I've never had a good experience with Cozy or Don.
And now you're a cozy convert.
But I love the Don Giovanni from Paris with that cast, and I know your your treasure cat. My
Oh my goodness. Philippe, if you're watching.
Okay. My favorite Figaro, also another overlap with mine, the Schulte one.
Oh, really? The Schulte figure? I mean, everybody loves the Schulte.
And her favorite Rosencavalier is the one with, oh, it's a Carrion.
Really?
With
Well, no one's perfect.
Teresa Stish-Randall. And she has a couple of other interesting operas. There's the Onegin with Franny. And
Franny, really?
yeah.
Oh, the Levine? Isn't that the Levine?
Mm-hmm. It's a good recording. It's just not as idiomatic.
Oh.
And there are other performances that I prefer, but it's not a very good opera on studio, and there are better ones on DVD nowadays.
Hmm.
There are better videos of that nowadays. I don't think Russian opera was served very well on disc for the longest time.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's obviously a shit ton of
And
Russian recordings of that opera, but none of them seem to catch the great artists at their peak together. You know
back,
what I mean? Like you get Vishnevskaya, but with everyone else sucks, and then you get her with a much better cast, but then she's not at her best, and you can't quite get everybody on the same page
this was a
with
very
a lot of
bizarre.
those Russian
This
recordings.
was a very bizarre recording. It had Thomas Allen, Franny Shikov, and Sophie.
I know it has so yeah. I
I,
really love that record.
and Dresden playing. I almost
Levine and Dresden. Yeah, it's a wacky one.
weird, but I think it would have done better if they had turned this into Peak Down.
I mean, at that point, Frenny was singing whatever she damn well wanted to, so maybe.
I think this would have been more interesting if they had done Peak Down.
Hmm. Could Shikoff have done that?
Well, it's a recording studio; they could do anything.
True.
And Tosca, the DeSalvato one, great taste.
Yeah, Natch.
Minotti's The Medium. Oh, this was from her son's recording label.
Oh, that's cute.
To deal with Joyce Castle, Patrice Michaels, etc. This is her daughter-in-law, Patrice Michaels.
Hmm.
There's Kurkas, The Good Soldier's Fight. That was the Yaroslav Hasek novel, also from Sedil, her son's label.
Mm-hmm.
Loves Stravinsky's The Rake's Progress with Philip Language, Sam Raimi, etc., with Astrid Varnay and Shai, and
Oh yeah.
Britain's Billy Budd with Nathan Gunn and Ian Bostridge under the direction of Daniel Harding. And
Huh.
her favorite lieder recordings are Schubert's On Mein Herz by Matthias Gurney and
Mm-hmm.
songs with Angelica Kirschlager. She had
Hmm.
a very nice taste in music. She evolved her taste over time. She knew young modern singers. I mean, what a great patron of the art form. And
Yeah.
it's so sad that we wouldn't see her in the house again. And I'm grateful I saw her once about
Yeah.
a decade ago. Glimmerglass was supposed to dedicate its most recent Fidelio to her.
Yeah,
Virginia,
that's a fitting tribute.
fitting tribute
But
to. I almost wonder sometimes, like, how would she have reacted to, let's say, the Kretzer one from Fidelio from London with Lisa. I would, I would love to have been beside her, asking her about her opinions on Lisa's Fidelio, or let's say Nina's Götterdämmerung Brunhilde, how she would have reacted to that. So yeah, rest in power, Justice Ginsburg, and thank you for all you've done, and thank you for being such a patron of this art form. And maybe she can, enjoy all the in whatever afterlife she's in, enjoying all the great singers, et cetera, et cetera. You can just imagine that. But yeah, that's our I guess that's our first streaming
yeah,
thing.
we made it. How long did we go?
You don't want to know.
Oh Christ. Well, I'm never gonna listen to it, so
84 minutes.
oh well, send it out into the ether.
Yeah, so I'll listen to it.
We need a theme song.
You know, JJ's announcement was the Zolomid. At some point, it turned into the Esclarmonde music.
Oh God, not Esclairmon, no Massenet, just something else.
Yeah. What should be our theme song?
What should be our theme song? I don't know. That's a good. Um, we'll I'll think about it.
What can we agree on?
But can
Grand Pop.
no, I mean, with the theme song, it shouldn't even be something that we necessarily like
That's
or know
awesome.
that well. It just needs to be a funny little. It just needs to be a funny little tune,
Fun.
right?
It has to be fun. It has to be fun. It can't be a serious. It can't be tragic. It has to be fun.
Only because you just sent it to me. I always have the very opening music of Twayons in my head, but because it's so chipper when they all come running out at the very beginning. I love that little.
And I'm just obsessed with Cassie's big scene. Oh, what a great scene.
Before, yeah.
Yeah. What a great scene.
Yeah. Anyway, I got to get back to that recording now.
Yeah, I'm doing part two right after this conversation, so
Good.
I'll have it by tomorrow. It won't be subdivided into chapters, but I can work on that at some point. And enjoy part one.
Yeah.
It's in great sound. That's in really good sound.
It is. Yeah, I noticed that it's. I mean, it's live, so there's a ton of stage noise, but I'll cope.
Yeah. Well, okay. Good night, Fletch. We'll see you in part two shortly. Or
All
something.
right. Hopefully it doesn't break this time. We'll see how the video compression goes.
Okay.
Yeah, fingers crossed. All right. See ya.